What's up guys, Adam here. So this is another video, and this I think you guys are really gonna like. This is the iPad 2, and this came back out in 2011, March 2011, which is a super long time ago. We're now in 2020, we've got notchless displays, 120 hertz refresh rates, we've got very high specs, Snapdragon 865, 813, whatever you are using. And this is 9 years old now, which is crazy to think because it actually doesn't look like it's 9 years old. If we look around the device, you can see, I have a case on it, but you could see it's a little bit bulky. And yes, it is bulky, but it's not that bad. I mean, seriously, this looks like a modern iPad. Like most iPads. Like if we compare this to an iPad Air 2 or something like that, yes, the bezels are a little bit thinner, but seriously, this is almost the exact same design. So, let's talk about some of the specifications that's in this device. So, first of all, you can see on the display, if you haven't noticed already, no, this is not Retina. This is a 768 by 1024 9.7 inch display. And yes, you can see pixels because this has a pixel density of 132 pixels per inch, which is not good by 2019 standards. Now, I wouldn't say that it's horrible and you can view content. And now what's surprising is that you can view content in 1080p. What I mean by that is that YouTube will actually support 1080p videos on here, but I'll be getting into that later. So yeah, in terms of the display, it's not terrible, but it's definitely not as good as a Retina display. You can see pixels. However, what I've noticed is that it does actually get pretty bright. Even like it does get pretty bright to about, I believe, 400 nits, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually a decent amount for an iPad, considering the new iPad Pro 2020 is only like 650 nits. So, pretty impressive. Now let's talk about the actual specifications, or like what's inside here essentially. So, let's see how much RAM we have. We have 512 megabytes of RAM. And it's kind of crazy to think because many companies such as OnePlus just released their OnePlus 8 Pro and they got 12 gigabytes of RAM. And, Apple's still only 4 gigabytes of RAM, but this only has 512 megabytes of RAM, which is half a gigabyte of RAM. Now, with that half gigabyte of RAM, we also got a 1 gigahertz dual core processor. And it's not that bad. And I'll kind of explain with this. And this is a Apple A5 chip, I believe. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the performance. What I could say, it's that it's okay for some basic tasks. But if you're in some more intensive tasks, it will be okay for some things, but not so good for other things. So I'll give you a little bit of example. Let's start off with a normal, opening one of these apps. So I just want to show you scrolling around the UI first, and you can see it's 60 hertz, obviously, so it's not going to be smooth like, my OnePlus 7 Pro, but still pretty smooth. And, yeah, I mean, if we're, going around here, opening up the control center, it's not that bad. Maybe the notification, actually, that was pretty good. But let's just go into some more, let's just go into some basic apps. Let's go into settings. So you can see that took a little bit of time. Let's go into notes. You could see, it took a little while. Let's go into photo booth. Hello. Let's go into camera. Let's do some multitasking. So essentially we got some some apps here, about 4. And so let's just click on them and see if any of them reloads. Okay, that one kind of reloaded, but it stayed on the app. Okay. not too bad. Notes, didn't reload. And settings, didn't reload. So basic apps, you'll be fine, mostly. Like, you really won't have a problem with it. But let's go into some more intensive apps. So one of the first things that we're going to do is that we're going to do a game. And so one of the games that we're going to do is Zombie Highway 2. Now, this is a pretty graphic 3D intensive game. So there's going to be a ton of graphics, and, it should be a pretty good representation on how good the performance is. So, yeah, okay. So, you could see it's pretty smooth right now. We're getting about a 40 to 50 FPS. I don't know the exact. And you can see it's not terrible. And actually, you're getting a pretty smooth frame rate, I would say. Around a 30 to 40 FPS with some drops. You saw a drop there. But to be honest, that's not that bad. I mean, I really wouldn't have a problem with playing this intensive game right here. I mean, yes, there is some stuttering occasionally, but it's really not that bad. Let's try to crash into something and see anything happens there. Like, let's try to lose. I don't know. Wow, it's still good. Look at that. It's still not too bad. I would say for that specific app, that's not that bad. But here's where it gets interesting. There's a lot of flashing colors and different graphics. It's going to be a little bit more difficult with frame rate wise. What I mean by that is, you know what? I'll just show you an example. This is Slope Run. Now, it may seem like a normal 3D game, but to be honest, it's much more intensive. So, let's see. Okay, so we're going into Slope Run, and it doesn't seem too bad. You can see when this moves, there was some stuttering in the beginning, but it's definitely not that bad right now. So now let's try to move around, and then you could see it's kind of a mess. And that's partly because ads come in middle of the game and kind of ruin it, but even with airplane mode turn on or something like that, you could see there's a large amount of stutter. And this is where it's really going to matter, because if you really want to do these really intensive games like that, you're not going to be able to do that. This is kind of an average game even, and it's not really handling it too well. Yes, occasionally it's getting a pretty good frame rate, like 30 FPS, but in other cases it's dropping down to 5, 10 FPS, so not the greatest performance here. Now we're going to do web browsing, and you can obviously see right now this is lagging pretty bad, and this is where it's really gonna show that you're not on the fastest iPad. Now let's go into some of these web applications. Let's go to Apple. You can see. Oh, it loaded the... Oh, okay. It loaded the... Oh, my God. Okay. Let's try Apple. And you could see it's definitely taking a while. Way longer than normal iPads. If we're, And, oh, by the way, new iPhone SE came out. Pretty excited for that. I mean, and let's zoom in here. You could see it's not terrible once you get it loaded. And you can see it's not... There's definitely some lag, but it's definitely not horrible. Sometimes what happens also, if we close an app, it lags a little bit. Let's see if that happens here. You can see that lag a little bit. Yeah. So now let's go into the battery. Now this is probably one of the best things about this iPad. Seriously, it's super good. It has a 6930 milliamp hour battery, so almost 7,000 milliamp hours. And what I can tell you about this is one of the greatest things about this iPad. It can last so many days on standby. It can last days if you just keep using the camera. Like from 100 to 0, it will probably take a couple of days to kill it. Seriously, I haven't charged this iPad for about, let me think, for about maybe 3 or 4 days now. It's at 15%, which, yes, it's low, but that's still much better than any kind of phone would do. Even a computer, even my MacBook can't do that well. I mean, seriously, this is a great iPad considering battery life. Now let's talk about those cameras. And we have up here, we have a 0.3 megapixel front camera. And on the back, we have a 0.7 megapixel back camera, which can actually record 720p, which is pretty surprising, considering this is from 2011. Now, let's take a few photos, and I'll tell you how they turn out. So let's look at some of these photos here. So this was taken a couple of days ago. Oh, shoot. By accident did that. And you could see the quality, even in the full light, is terrible. Absolutely horrendous. This is by the way, the back-facing camera. This is another back-facing camera shot, and you can see there is literally absolutely no dynamic range. And if we look at another photo with it, I tap to focus over there, there's still no dynamic range. And taking a look at this photo, it's just terrible. This is of my computer, and you can barely even see the screen. This is probably one of the best photos you'll probably be able to get. It looks somewhat mediocre. I mean, I guess it's acceptable. This is like the only photo that's maybe okay. But let's check out a video. This is a video test of the iPad 2 on its back-facing camera, and you could see the dynamic range is non-existent. You could see there's the sun. If we ground here, there's my laptop. Definitely not good at all. And what's even worse is the front-facing camera. This is probably one of the worst cameras I have ever seen. If we look here, there is literally no detail in here. It's basically like a 240p camera. Like, seriously, this is terrible. Let's check out the video, though. This is a front-facing video test, and this is absolutely horrible. This does not even look 480p. Now let's talk about just YouTube and Netflix. Now, this is actually one of the best things about this, because this is a great YouTube watcher. Yes, it's not 720. I mean, it's not, a full good resolution. I mean, it's definitely not great, but it's, it's acceptable. And let's do a sound test too. Let's just click, I guess this one, I don't know. This is probably the loudest one. Oh my god, an ad. Okay, so you could see, in my opinion, it's actually a pretty decent speaker. Even though it's only mono, it's like a huge speaker grill. Like, seriously, this is right here. Huge speaker grill. And you can see watching video is not going to be terrible. If we switch it to, let's switch it to 1080p. Let's see how it looks. Doesn't look terrible. So, yeah, I wouldn't complain about it. Anyway, guys, should you buy this in 2020? I would say for the majority of people, no. I would not recommend this. Now, the reason why is because of the bad specifications, the terrible camera, and even though it's a good battery, it's just the loading apps and stuff is going to take a long, long time. Now, what I would recommend is the iPad 4 at least, or the iPad Mini 2. I actually used to have the iPad Mini 2, until I cracked it. So I had to get a lower specification iPad. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and see you in the next one.